My name is Zelda Fuchsman, but forget about the Fuchsman. You'll never remember that. You will remember Zelda, the last alphabet, Z. And there's, I understand there's some kind of a game, a computer game of some sort or whatever on television. It's called Zelda. I bet you know it, right? Yeah. So you'll never forget me. And that's what I want you to never forget me and what I represent. You may ask yourself, now that you've learned a little bit about the Holocaust, why would your school, your teachers, your parents approve to learn about such a hard subject, such a sad subject? Well, we will have questions later, I think. I'll try to be as brief as I can. And it is not for you to feel sorry for me or people like me. It is the lesson for your future. Not only for the future, but right now. I want to read you a few things before I start on my story, because this is the most important message that I can give you, why I speak to you. I'm a child survivor of the Holocaust, meaning that I was a child during the war. Actually, if you look there, there's a picture of me. I was 4 years old. This is who is speaking to you, not this lady with the gray hair. I appreciate you wanting to learn from me, to learn the truth that the Holocaust happened, because there are some crazies in the world that say the Holocaust never happened. Many of you went to visit in the DC, the Holocaust Museum, and you just saw one room, an experience of a composite child, Daniel's story, and the kind of life that people had, some better, some worse, but normal lives. It was an evil time for the Jews and many others. But first, I want to tell you that each one of you has great power. You may ask yourself, what is she talking about? What kind of power do I have? I'm only 11 years old. But you have power. The power is yours, in your hands, how you treat your fellow students and everyone. It is in your power to stop bullying. Remember what the problem is nowadays. It has been a problem many years, but especially now with the Facebook and the birdies and the tweets and whatever you want to call it. You have the power how you treat each other. If you see that person that is being bullied and hurt, you, each one of you, can do something about it. Befriend that person. Put yourself in the shoes of that person, how they feel. They say to themselves, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? They don't like me. They hate me. I don't like them. I hate them. I'm going to hurt them as revenge. This is the circle of bullying, dislike, discrimination, anti-anything. And that's the power that you have. You're just starting to learn about the Holocaust. It serves a great example of what discrimination, hate does. Remember that evil and affront against anyone is really an indignity, and evil against each one of us, you and yourselves. Remember that evil, ignoring evil, makes one's own soul scarred forever. Think about it. Someday you'll grow up, and let's say if you were very brutal, unkind to somebody, and you will think about it, why did I do that to an innocent child? Okay, they were a little different, so they shaved their head or whatever they did. But it really marks your own soul when you dish out any kind of dislike against another human being. What does it mean, the Holocaust? It means the destruction by fire, a complete destruction, and especially of a large number of people, of human beings. That is what happened to 6 million Jewish people and 5 million others, such as gypsies, handicapped, mentally deficient, gays, and others that Hitler and his followers and collaborators called needless human being, subhumans. How many of you have met a Holocaust survivor before? You did? Good. Okay. Just me? No, I don't mean me. I mean before me. So a couple of you did. And you, as you continue your education, you will meet others. But keep in mind, child survivors are the last witnesses. So I'm like one of the last ones that you will meet. How many think you never met a Jewish person? All of you met a Jewish person? You know, yeah, okay. So you know there's no great difference between Jewish people and non. I belong to an organization of child survivors, hidden children of the Holocaust, and our members lived through the hell of killing camps, concentration camps, on the run, in the forest, in holes, under a pigsty, in convents, hidden by priests, hidden by farmers. These people and many others saved Jewish children, Jewish people from the killers. They saved people because it was the right thing to do, even though their own lives and families were in danger. They were not what we call bystanders. They did something. Can you visualize what 6 million means? How do you see it in your mind's eye, what 6 million? You can see, let's say, 80 kids. 6 million. Let me give you something to think about. You'll never forget that. Recently, a mathematician did some calculations, and he came up with this. If you read 2,000 names each day, now listen, it'll take you 8 years and 3 months to finish reading 6 million. Can you see now the enormity of what 6 million means? It's attached to names. It's not anymore the number 6 million. 1.5 million of them were children. Innocent children, babies. People like you. You would have never survived if you were Jewish and picked up and so on. Only about 8% of the Jewish children of all of Europe, all the countries of Europe like Poland and Lithuania and Hungary and so forth, survived the Holocaust, survived that wartime. I'm one of the few. I'm one of the 8%. So let's pretend there's 100 kids in this group. Only 8 children would have survived by some lucky chance. Of course, children didn't survive on their own. They always needed to have some help for adults. So, my message to you and my appeal that each one of you will live your life with kindness for all. You will carry on what it means to be a good person. You will stand up to fight injustice, and remember that when you meet a survivor, you will remember that you spoke and that you learned about the Holocaust, and that the Holocaust did happen, that the deniers are the ones that are liars. Remember that discrimination, bullying, that is the ugly thing. It leads to evil deeds and eventually to killing and murder. You learned about the Holocaust through different books. The Holocaust is not only concentration camps. You've heard about concentration camps, right? You've heard about the tattoos that people got in the concentration camp. Only in one camp they got the tattoos. That was Auschwitz, when they divided the people and chose only the ones that were selected to work. They are the ones that got tattoos. You will learn it as you continue on your education in your higher grades. People were murdered in different ways, and people survived in different ways. And my story is a little different. And each time you meet another survivor, you will learn about another way what the Holocaust meant. Actually, our organization is donating a class set of books. We Remember the Children. There are 36 stories, and no two survivals are alike. These are all children. My story is a little different, because I survived with my parents and my brothers, and we really were on the run. What happened is I was born in Poland. I was 4 years old when the war broke out in 1939. And just a little bit history, which you will learn in the future, is the leader of Germany, Hitler, and the leader of Russia, Stalin, they made a treaty, an agreement that they will not attack each other, but they decided they will come in and take over Poland and attack Poland and divide it between the two of them. So our part of Poland, my part where we lived, was taken over by the Soviets. But before I go there, I want to show you my father. He was served in the Polish army. He was a soldier way before that time. And the reason that I'm showing you is that we were not any different than any other citizen of Poland. We didn't harm anyone. My grandfather raised 7 children in the house right in the front with a red porch. This was done by an uncle of mine from memory of the village where they were born and lived. And 4 of my father's siblings came to the United States at the turn of the century. Turn of the century means like 1900s, the early 1903, 1906, and so on. This is my family, my mother, Rivka, my father, Moses, my brother Noah, and I am their Zelda. Now they said Jews are subhuman, they're ugly, they're dirty. This is a normal Jewish family. And we were good citizens of the country. So here it is, Germany and Russia divide Poland, and the Soviets came into our part of Poland. And actually, our life became much easier. The Russians came into our part of Poland, and things got better for us, because before there was a lot of discrimination by the Polish citizens against Jews. There was a lot of anti-Semitism for no reason, because Jewish people really lived like all other citizens, tried to raise families and do the right thing. They were good citizens for many generations. But when the Soviets, the Russians came in, things became much easier for us, because under their political system, they said, everybody's equal, nobody can abuse anybody else. What is yours is mine, what is mine is yours, but it all belongs to the government, and we'll tell you what to do. And we don't pray because there's no God. That was the atheist belief of communism. However, my father was able to get a job. My brother wasn't beat up anymore on the way from school with stones and jeers, and things got better. But in 1941, Hitler decided he's not going to be a partner with Stalin, the leader of Russia, or Russian, and he attacked our area. Meaning not Hitler himself, of course, his army, his airplanes. And the airplanes started flying in and dropping bombs and just swooshing in and shooting at anything that moved in the streets. They had little airplanes called Messerschmitt with propellers. They didn't have jets in those times, with big machine guns, and they would just swoop in and just shoot at anything. People ran to hide. You couldn't hide in a building because a building was a big target for a bomb. We all ran and hid in the forests so you couldn't be seen by the planes. The soldiers didn't come in yet. What they did is they tried to subdue the population. So when their army would come in, nobody would fight them anymore, and certainly that's how it was. But we were hiding in the forest, and my parents created hobo bags from sheets, tied in a few things, some silverware. My mother had a hand-cranked sewing machine, some pillows, something that we could stay in the forest and hide, a little bit of food, and when there was a lull in the attack, they would run back to the house to get something. And we hid in the forest like this, and the planes, of course, they were dropping bombs even in the forest, but they didn't know where we were, so, you know, they couldn't see because the trees are like a tremendous canopy. And the family, that was our family, I'll show you a picture later, said to the younger people like my parents and a couple of cousins, they heard already that in the German part of Poland, they were taking the young away for slave labor, never heard of again. So the elderly people or people that had little babies, they couldn't really run and hide anywhere, they said to the young ones, you get out of here. We will be okay, because when the Germans were here in the First World War, another 1918 and so on, they weren't really that bad. Once they win, that they're occupying, nobody's fighting them, we'll be okay. My father was able to get us on the last train out of our town. The last train, the army train, the Russian train, they were retreating. They couldn't fight these Germans with the planes and the bombs. They didn't have that. And as the train was moving away, we continued on to go into Russia. These planes followed us, not the bombers, but the ones with the machine guns, and they would attack the train, and we would run off the train. And of course, I couldn't run fast. My father carried me. I was about 5 years old at that point, and my brother was 6 years older, 11, your age, 11 and a half, and we would run off the train. The train, of course, would stop, and we would jump off and run and hide in a nearby forest next to the railroad tracks or in a bush, not to be big targets. And I was so scared. The airplanes were very noisy. Those motors were very noisy. And, of course, the shooting, it was like a... And they were just shooting at anything. When they didn't stay long, because they didn't have enough ammunition. When they flew back away, the people got back on the train. And I would see people laying on the ground, read stuff, but I didn't understand it at the age of 5. I bet you have siblings at home that are 5 that they don't understand what things like that mean. There were dead people that were injured, but as long as Mommy and Daddy said it's okay and protected me, I was okay. We got back into the train, and you know, the miracle is this happened a few times until we got deeper into Russia. But the locomotive never got damaged. And we continued on like this. Eventually, the planes could not follow us anymore because we got in way deeper into Russia, and they dropped us off at a communal farm. A communal farm is a government farm. It's owned by the government. They say it's owned by the people, but in reality, it's the communist government that owns it. People live there, they work there, they don't have any rights to change, to go to another village. Once you're settled in, that's where you stay. Anyways, this train with the Russian army soldiers dropped us off in this village. And the people came running to see Jewish people. They heard Jews came to their village. They never met a Jewish person. And they heard that Jews have horns growing out of their head. Now, this was something that passed on for a few centuries from a misinterpretation of the Bible story, of the Bible. Many of you go to Sunday school and you learn about Moses, that he brought down the 10 Commandments, or you read about it, right? Moses was a great leader, a great rabbi of the Jewish people going back 3,000 years. he went up Mount Sinai to meet with God, and God gave him the tablets with rules, with laws, how people should behave. And actually, we follow these laws now. Honor thy mother and thy father, thou shalt not kill, and so forth. And it became the law of the world, basically. But Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and in the Bible, in the Jewish Bible, it is written that when he came down, he had a light shining out of him, an aura, because he was in the presence of God. He was radiating with these lights and rays, and he had rays coming out of his head like horns, it was interpreted. The Hebrew word horns and rays are very similar, so when it was translated from Hebrew to Latin, it was translated that Moses had horns, that even the great sculptor, Michelangelo, created a statue, which is still now, I believe it is in Florence, Italy, Moses with horns. And you could Google it and you could see it yourself. And this is how this stupidity got passed on. And of course, what does horns mean? Horns is a devil, and so the Jews became evil too because they had horns. Of course, we're not any different than anyone else. What does Jewish mean? It means that we pray to the same God that everyone else, but in the Hebrew language, or in the language of the country where we live, or combination, like when I go to synagogue, we read English, we read Hebrew. That's the difference. We're the same like everyone else. In this village, my parents worked very hard. They were glad to work hard because we had safety, we had food, we had shelter. And they didn't know how to be lazy because they were not raised under communism. Under communism, people didn't really excel and work hard because they would get the same food, the same pay, the same housing, everything the same. They didn't have to work hard. But my parents were very hardworking people. Both of them came from little villages. And the manager of the farm, he was so impressed. He never saw people working so hard to earn a little bit of their safety and living. But after the harvest time, my father was taken away from us, basically slave labor to work in the coal mines, far away. So here we are alone, my mother, age 36, probably the age of your mommies and daddies, and I was 5.5 at that point. My brother was almost 12. Alone, but we were safe. We had food, we had everything that we needed. But of course, Daddy was not with us. In the spring, the manager comes to my mother and he says, Rivka, the war's getting closer. The Germans are getting closer, deeper into Russia. It's dangerous for you to remain here. You're Jewish. Take your children and get out of here. I'm going to give you a covered wagon and 2 oxen. Leave. My mother says, leave, dangerous, Jewish. What do you mean? How am I going to go? Where's my husband? How is he ever going to find us in this big world if we leave here? And besides, I never drove oxen. I don't know what to do with oxen, even though I'm a village girl, but I didn't do that. But she used to say, I had no choice. Even when she was an old lady in Chicago, we would talk about our adventures of survival, she would say, I had no choice. I had to accept this offer because I had to save my children. That's what mommies and daddies do, don't they? They do a lot of sacrificing for you all. And she accepted this offer. But what she did is she invited a family of 6 people, 4 adults, a newborn baby, and a little teenage boy, like my brother, a pre-teener, 12. and we were getting ready to leave. In the morning that we were leaving, my father appeared. What happened is the coal mines got bombed, many people got killed or injured, but father got away without injury, and of course, we don't know how long it took him to come to the village because he was far away, but it was such a blessing. And I remember, whenever I talked to the kids, and I talked often, it never stops, that when I remember that scene, when he appeared, "Oh, Mesha," that was kind of a nickname for Moses, for my father. "You're here, my mother." We had such a reunion, such joy to be with Daddy. My father was a very kindest, you would have loved him, but also a very tough guy. He knew how to do anything. He knew how to survive in the deepest of forests with wolves. He was not afraid. He knew how to take care of oxen, and he took over the leadership and drove us, or led us, out of the village and into deeper Russia. We traveled for over 3 months across part of Russia, through deserts. We were hungry. There was many times we had no water, no food. Through mountains. There were no roads, gravel roads that were with steep precipice that you could, just one little move, the wagon could have fallen over. And people did. Other refugees. Through rivers that the water was so speedy that some people, if they didn't know how to cross over, they were just swept away. But my father, he knew how to do. He was an amazing man, and he improvised and did whatever it was necessary to keep us safe. We came to an area that is called Chechen, which is, the teachers, they know about Chechen. And actually, if you remember seeing in the news about what happened in Boston at the marathon, those two brothers, they were out of that area, Chechen. And it's a tribal communities there. And they were actually stealing the animals at night. My father used to tie himself up with a rope to both of the oxen and sleep in the grass very close to them on a short rope, and he would tie the two legs together very close so they could take only tiny, tiny little steps. So during the day we traveled, and at night the oxen grazed or rested, and father slept in the grass with them for over 3 months. That's how he kept us safe, so that those tribal people that used to steal the animals wouldn't steal ours. When I tell you we traveled with a covered wagon across Russia, we didn't ride in the wagon. 2 oxen couldn't pull 10 people. It would have been impossible. We walked barefoot under all sorts of conditions. We would go to sleep at night in the grass, in the morning wind up in a puddle of water because it rained or whatever. It was a very hard, difficult crossing. But eventually we came to the Caspian Sea, and there the government, the Russian oh, by the way, on the way my father was arrested many times as a deserter from the coal mines. He didn't have any papers that he was released from this work, and we thought we would never see him again. But each time he was able to convince him, because in Russia at that time, the radios didn't work, the telephones, there was no communication. They were different times than you guys are growing up in. But anyways, at the Caspian Sea, my parents were signed up to work in a factory in Siberia. Siberia is, if I can tell you, you know about Alaska? Yeah, okay. Well, Siberia is something like Alaska, but really cold. Once the winter sets in, it doesn't melt till the spring comes in May, or it's a short summer. They put us on a rickety boat of 500 refugees, Polish Jews, who managed to escape Poland. We didn't know what we were escaping, except what the family said: you're young, the Germans are taking them away, the young people, for work. And They put us on this rickety boat. It took a few days to cross over. They brought us on the other side, and we waited for a train to take us to Siberia. We all got malaria on the seashore because there was no housing. We were with a sheet. My parents would make a little tent. But eventually the train came and took us. We rode for about 10 days. And they brought us in trucks to outside of a small town in Siberia, where my parents were, and the other 500 people. By the way, 500 people, some were children, so not everybody was a worker. They brought us into a barrack that was placed in the ground, in a hole in the ground. So I'll tell you what, if you take this room and divide it in half and multiply it probably 10 times, I don't even know if it was half, it's a little narrower. And this is where they brought us all. This became our home. We had shelving on either side of the barrack, and in the center they were two high, right, a lower shelf and an upper shelf. This is where we settled. This is where we lived. My parents worked in the factory from morning till night. Morning meaning from dark to dark. Working hard. Russia was in a hard spot at that time. In those years, they were fighting the Germans. So all their young people, all their whatever they had, it was used to maintain the army. So the people, and especially refugees like us, we were not really provided with anything. The people that worked in the factory got a meal there. My mother would bring from the factory, she worked in the cafeteria, from her own lunch, a jar of watery soup for my brother and I. My parents, for working in the factory, my father got an allotment, a piece of bread. Visualize a brick. Can you see a brick? Cut it in half. That was our allotment, a piece, like a half of a brick of black bread, dark bread for the four of us. This is what we had the first year and a half of food. The hunger was so great, you stop being hungry. We were 500 people in this, living on shelves. There was no privacy. We had no bathrooms. We had no running water. We had no any water. You had to go to a well to try and get water, or to melt water for snow for water, you needed wood. Under communism, the trees belonged to the government. You were not allowed to cut trees. So my father used to go, and he borrowed an axe on the one day off that they had, and he would go and find stumps. And he knew where there are stumps, there are roots. So he dug up the roots, and those he felt the government would not object that if he took those. And that's what my mother used to boil water in a tub outside of the barrack to boil our clothing. We had no soap. Lice, you could just pick them off like that. My mother shaved my head. I just had a little bang because you could not keep up to maintain cleanliness. To keep warm, we didn't have any clothing. My brother was older, so he had something, but I was a little one yet. My mother used to undress me and wrap me in the sheet, that hobo sheet that we brought with, and boil my clothes. And in the wintertime, when you hang out that clothes, from the lack of humidity, it dries in the cold. It's like freeze-dried. And it would be semi-dry. She would bring it and put it on me, and it would dry on my body. We had no change of clothes. Bathrooms, the outhouse was disgusting in the summer, and you could not approach in the winter. Bathing, we didn't bathe. Who had a bathroom? A sponge bath, maybe. Mother would wash me around. Try to wash in a tub. Not sitting in a tub, but with a washcloth, a piece of rag. I didn't attend school. I didn't have the clothing. But what I want to tell you also, yes, we suffered. Yes, life was very, very difficult. But in Russia, they didn't kill Jews. People died like flies from hunger, disease. We had no doctor's medicine. There was no such thing. But they didn't kill Jews. There were no guns held against Jews. And by the way, the whole time that we were in Siberia, we didn't know what was going on in Poland, what they were doing there. It was a very difficult life. But we survived. My husband also was in Siberia, but deeper, further north. 100 families were sent there with children, and their work was to cut trees in the forest. Out of 100 families, only 8 survived, and 2 children, my husband and his little brother. They were lucky to survive. And not because anybody held a gun and killed them because they were Jews, but they were refugees, they were aliens, they were from Poland, and they used this labor to do the work that their own people couldn't do because they were fighting the Germans. You know, I was telling you that 6 million Jews were not killed, murdered on purpose. 20 million Russians died in the war fighting the Germans. So it was a horrible time in the world, and you will learn it as you continue on. Okay, fast forward. The war is over. They supply us a kettle car train. Now, we were not packed like 80, 100 into a car, as you must have read somewhere along the line. Did you read about what they did to Jewish people? They packed them into kettle cars. Well, this we didn't. We had families. We had straw, places to sleep on. Actually, they even had a higher shelf. I remember laying there and looking out the window to see what the passing scene. And we traveled across Russia a long time, many weeks, because we didn't have priority. The Russian army had priority. And a lot of infrastructure, meaning railroads and things, were destroyed during the wartime, during the fighting. We had no running water. There was no privacy for bathrooms. You hid behind a bush or under the train. It was a hard crossing too, but nobody was hurting us. We were going home to our families. We had families that we left behind, grandmothers, aunts, uncles, cousins. So here, after many weeks, we come to the first station, and this is where we learned about the hate, what was happening to Jewish people. Even after the war, in the country of our birth, we were returning home. We arrived at the first Polish station in Poland, and we wanted to get off and use a public bathroom instead of hiding under a train car, or use fresh water from a faucet. And we were not allowed to get off. There were hoodlum element people with stones and yelling at us, "Żydy nazad, Żydy do Palestiny," it meaning like, "Dirty Jew, go back or go to Palestine." They didn't want us to come back to our hometowns, to our families, and we were not safe. The train continued on and took us to a city where survivors were gathered from different ways of how they survived. Concentration camps, from the forest, from hiding, false papers, whichever way. Little children that were taken in by good Christian people and saved during that evil time. And they brought us to the city. We were latecomers. There was no place for us to find a housing anymore because the city was really bummed out. My father found a bummed out building with one room that was still intact. The windows were blown out. To get up to that high first floor, you had to kind of shuffle against the wall because a piece of the staircase was blown away. And my father said, "I'm not going to stand in line to get some food for us. I'm going to go and get some work. I know how to work and I'll earn what we need in order to feed ourselves." So what kind of work do you get in a bummed out city? There's nothing was really functional. But they had these groups of men that were working in bummed out buildings, taking out bricks that were still whole, not damaged, and pieces of metal that can be recycled. But he wasn't hired because his name sounded Jewish. So he went to another gang and he changed his name so it wouldn't sound Jewish. He didn't look Jewish, but what does a Jew look like? It's a person. But this was already, the Germans were not there. This was the mindset of the collaborating population. Anti-Semitism, discrimination, even after the war. My parents could not feed my brother and I, so they gave us to like an orphanage, a children's home. This is what I looked like when we left Siberia. I needed some kind of ID papers. My head was shaved. I just had these bangs. And whoops. And this is what my brother and I looked like in 1945-46 when we cleaned up. He's 6 years older, in the children's home. I spoke only Russian. I forgot how to speak the Yiddish or Polish, the other languages. But we were safe there because there were leaders that took care of us. And we started to have more of a normal life. But even in this children's home, on our windowsills in the bedrooms that we shared with many little girls, we had bricks and liter bottles of sand as projectiles, because every night, drunkard hoodlum elements, non-Jewish, Polish people, not everybody, I want to clarify this in a minute, they would try to attack Jewish homes and Jewish people. And these projectiles, these bricks and bottles, was our defense, to throw at them. And actually, it was a good thing that the Russian army was in Poland. They protected us in many ways. But many people that returned to their villages to see if anybody's alive, or to reclaim their homes, or to see what can they do after surviving 5-6 years of hell. They were chased out of the villages, or some disappeared, because the population that grabbed whatever was the Jewish homes and so on, they wouldn't give it back. This is where we found out what happened to our families. Some of you have learned about the pits, what they did, how they killed people by taking them to a trench that was dug by the Jewish men. They had the people undressed, boys, girls, children, babies, grandmas, men, women, no shame, didn't matter. And they killed them in the pits. And this is what happened to a grandmother of mine, my grandmother Sarah. I don't have a picture of her. My father's brother, Wolf, my mother's mother, Batya, and a newborn baby. And this beautiful family, this family, my mother's aunt and uncle, they told us, get out of here. You're young, go, we will be okay. The Germans won't hurt us. In the pits. The pits were the testing ground in our area. They wanted to see if they will kill Jews, meaning they, the Nazis, the Germans, will the population protect their citizens? Well, they didn't. They collaborated. And they saw that they could kill Jews very easily. By the way, Poland had a population of over 3,300,000. Over 3,300,000 or so Jewish people, and only about 365,000 survived. As you learn math, you'll understand that. It was not safe for us to be in Poland. People left. And you know where we found safety? Of all places, in Germany, because the American soldiers were there. The British soldiers were there. In the DP camp, a displaced persons camp, refugee camp. This is where I started my education. I was 11 years old, your age. They put me in 5th grade, and I was like a sponge. I wanted to learn. This is where I learned that I'm somebody, that I'm not an invisible child just to survive. I didn't know who I was, but I learned that I am just as good as everyone else. We didn't have books. A pencil, I guarded it so the tip wouldn't break. We didn't have the facilities. It was a makeshift school in a DP camp, displaced persons camp. So what I want to tell you guys, never too late to start to learn. You think you are here because you want to make mommy and daddy happy or the teachers happy? Because you're going to be a student or study? No, you're going to do this for yourself. This is something that nobody can ever take away from you, your education. This is your gift to yourself. Yes, your mommy and teachers will be proud of you when you excel. But think another thing. If you sit on the computer and you play that silly game forever and you want to win it, can you imagine if you sit and study and learn what you're supposed to? Nobody can ever take this away. That's your gift. It's your future. You know, my father was such a darling man. He used to say to me, Dotsie, meaning little daughter, it doesn't take this, it takes this to be a good student. Meaning, if you sit and study, this will grow too, the brain. So the gift to yourself, the education, is for you. Not for the teachers, not for your parents, for you. And it's never too late to excel and do well. We were in the DP camp till 1949, and we got our visas and quota meaning we had to wait for a certain number in order to qualify to come to the United States. And in 1949, in August, we were put on an Army ship and brought to Boston Harbor in August of 27th, and then a train to Chicago where we were reunited with my father's 2 sisters and 2 brothers. That's why I have pictures, because before the war we sent pictures to the family. So when we came here, we found pictures here, and also we had a cousin in Israel, Palestine at that time. I was 13 years old. I was placed in the 7th grade. And the kids looked at me as if I was some oddity, because I didn't speak any English. I knew how to say hello, chocolate, Coca-Cola. But I learned it very fast because I wanted to. I knew that this is where I felt free. We finally unpacked. You know, we were on the go, on the run, since I was 4 years old. So here at the age of 13, we finally unpacked. And we were just so amazed by this country and the opportunities we had. This country is the best in the world. And I've traveled in quite a few places, and before the war, or during the war, and after. The kind of what we call here a melting pot is what makes us so unique. And such a beautiful, beautiful country. And you're the future. You have to protect that country for yourself and for your children. I succeeded in school because I wanted to. I wanted to catch up. I wanted to be part of this country, part of this life. We got married, my husband and I, young, because that was the custom for girls in those years. If you finished high school, it was good enough. Not now. You better continue with college, university. You need that diploma. It's very, very important. Don't give up. We have 2 daughters. My older daughter just got her master's degree. She is a teacher of math and science, and she accepted a job for much less money that was offered to her in another school. She wanted to teach at the school for the blind because she wants to help people. She's a very sweet, kind woman. And my other daughter, she was in the student, bright, but she was not into books. She's a makeup artist, and she does weddings and fashion shows and so on. That's what she likes to do. We have 2 granddaughters, a 15-year-old Rebecca and a 9-year-old Taylor. We retired to Florida about 17 years ago from Chicago. We're happy, and we come to speak to you because I feel that I'm a gift to you. I'm your gift, because through me you're learning real history and the truth. My experience is only one kind of an experience of what the Holocaust meant. But I know that each one of you is a gift for me. And you'll say, what kind of gift am I? Because you understand the message that I bring you, that you have the power to make a better world. Fight injustice. Don't be bystanders, no matter what, now as children with the bullying and so on, but for the future. Don't follow evil rulers, evil leaders. If you make a better world for you, it'll be a better world for me, my children and grandchildren, and we will all feel safe. So in brief, I told you that we have power not to be bystanders. You have a gift that no one can take away, your education, so continue and do well in it. And remember to build a wonderful, better world. I'm leaving a lot of time because I think we'll have questions, and I'll answer anything you want. So, and by the way, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Questions are, without questions, you can't get answers. So anything, just go ahead, and I bet you it's going to be great. Yeah.
Is your brother passed away?
My brother didn't pass away. He's 84 years old. Let me tell you something. You know, I didn't have an education. In a minute. I didn't have an education until I was 11 years old when it started. And it was kind of a primitive school, kind of a setup. But when I came to the United States, not from school, not going to school, but from life, I came with 5 languages. Yiddish, which is the language, Jewish, it's like a German language. Polish was the language of the country where I was born. Russian was the language I learned during the time we were in Siberia. When we were in the DP camp in Germany, I learned German. And then in the school, we learned Hebrew because they were preparing us to go to Palestine. But of course, my father wanted to go to be with his family. So my brother, who's 84, he was a brilliant student, and he continued his education. He's got a doctor's degree in languages. He taught many languages in university and humanities, and he is a musician. He plays every instrument, and that's my brother Noah. Yes. Did I ever go to a concentration camp? We were invited to visit Bergen-Belsen. This is where Anne Frank, someday you will read the story of Anne Frank. This is where she died of typhoid with her sister Margot, and many people died there. And we went there to visit to commemorate the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. Actually, the founder of our organization, Frida Jaffe, she was liberated, mind you, liberated as if she was an enemy, at the age of 7 in Bergen-Belsen, alone. No one else of her family survived, but an uncle that was in another camp somewhere survived, reclaimed her. So I was in Bergen-Belsen. Yes, honey. Did I ever have a bat mitzvah? Not the way they have it here. When we were in the DP camp and I turned 12, that was the more the orthodox way, is they do bat mitzvah at the age of 12 for girls, 13 for boys. My father went to synagogue and he had special prayers, and I got presents. That was the easier way, yeah.
How long did it take you to learn English?
How long did it take me to learn English? You know, I probably less than a half a year. The school that I was in seventh grade, they put me in. I didn't know any English, but I was determined to learn. I had little cousins, American, and Barbara would say table, say chair, and she would point out things. She was like 4 years old, and she was teaching me to say the words. But of course, the spelling was a problem. The English spelling, there are a lot of hidden letters, where in other languages, whatever you say is written out, so it's much easier to do. I had a teacher, her name was Ruth Gilruth, and she saw that the children, I was the only refugee kid in that school, the children looked at me as if I was odd. So she sent me with another little girl to deliver something to the office. And while we were gone, she gave a lecture to the students in the classroom to explain to them that I'm not that different and they should be kind to me. You have the power to be good to people. Well, that recess, oh my God, they all wanted to play with me. And one little girl invited me to go to lunch. In those days, we went home to lunch. And I said, no, I have food. I thought that I was getting a handout, not as a courtesy to have a social time with this child. Not that particular day, but in the future. But I learned that this was a sign of friendship. Yes?
Was it kind of different, like learning different languages and having to go to different places?
Was it difficult? You know, when you're a child, you learn so much more. The brain gets wired. They used to say you're confusing children if you learn too many languages. Not really. I think your brain gets more wired to learn more and see more, and it just became natural. I don't know how I learned, not in school, just living. And I'm glad I know. Now, I have six languages that I understand, all of them. But I only speak 3 fluently, because if you don't use it, you lose it. But if I would, let's say, go back to Poland and be there for a half a year, it would all come back. I speak Yiddish very fluently, read and write, Russian, childish Russian, because I was a little girl, and of course English. That's my love language. Yes, darling?
Can you, with all your languages, do you speak all of them very well?
I just said 3 languages I speak very, very well. Я говорю по-русски очень хорошо. That I'm speaking Russian very good. Ich rede Yiddish. This is the Mama Loshen. I speak Yiddish. This is the mother language. That's the love language between mother and child. And of course I speak English. I write. I edited this book. We've got a second book coming out, and I've helped other people with their books and art books. So English is a wonderful language. And you know, I have a motto. I hope you pick it up from me, because this is going to serve you for the rest of your life. You may ask, how old am I? I am going to be 78 at the end of the year, almost 80. But you know what my motto is? Every day I have to learn something new. Whether it's a word or something to learn how to do on the computer or on a picture, or how to spell something, a new word, or to read something new, I have to learn something new. Questions, curiosity builds the mind and character. And by the way, when you learn something in school and you say, why do I have to learn about mythology? Who cares about mythology? I'll never use it, or algebra. Yes, you will, because someday you will even be, let's say not for something you work, but you'll be at a party, and people will stand, they'll talk about mythology and Hercules and Zeus and the islands of Greece and so on. And you learned it now or in the near future, and you'll say, you know what, I know what they're talking about. It gives you a sense of self, that you're informed, that you're intelligent. Everything you learn in school is for a purpose. And anything you learn to fill your curiosity is like a bonus. Okay, next question? Yes?
You have a question?
Yeah. Do I still? What did you say? I don't hear what. Do I want to go to Poland? Or will I go to Poland? I don't want to go to Poland, but I probably will go to visit the concentration camps. They have a program, it's called the March of the Living, and maybe I'll take my granddaughter in a couple of years. We have to visit. Those are like the cemeteries of the Jewish people. By the way, this is another thing I forgot to mention to you. When I tell you about what the Germans did, what the Poles did, what the Belgians did, what the Hungarians, it's not people of the country, not everyone. It's the collaborators, but there were many wonderful, good people in every country that saved Jews and helped Jews. Not only Jews, they saved other people. They did good things. They fought the Germans. Okay, next question. Yes, young man.
Were you ever like sick or injured?
Did I ever?
Were you ever sick or injured or during the time?
Oh, was I ever sick? Yeah, I had the measles. There, you know, I had tonsils that they were so big that I could click them. There was no help. My mother would make makeshift compresses to put around my neck. You know, I guess I have a good constitution that we were able to overcome. We had measles, malaria. No doctors. You just somehow the system overcame. But this is why so many people died in Russia, not because they were killed, but because life was hard. And yes, in Russia there was anti-Semitism. They had a test. Let's say a hooligan kid would approach. He suspected me that I was Jewish. And they had a test. They thought that Jews don't know how to say the sharp r, r. In the Russian language, they don't have radish, they have radish. You hear the difference between the R and R? So they had a word and they'd say, "Скажи кукуруза," say corn, that's what it means. And they thought Jews could not say the kukuruza, r, r. It's a tip of the tongue. Yeah. R. They only knew how, they thought Jews can only say it gutturally in the throat. Скажи kukuruza. You hear it? Like the French say it. Can you believe all the French probably are Jews then, because they don't know how to say that. But that was a silly test. And of course, I knew how to say it. Another one threw a stone at me. I still have a scar from that. But these were hooligan elements. The country itself did not kill Jews, unless you spoke against Stalin and the government. Then they sent you off into deeper Siberia, and many never were heard of. The archipelagos, some of you know what I'm talking about, the adults. It was not an easy time. This is why we in this country, we have to protect the world in this country, that we don't have crazies that come and abuse people. More questions? I left you a lot of time. Yes?
Do the Polish people still allow Jews?
Do the Polish people still allow Jews? There are some Jews that are living in Poland. There are some Jewish children that were taken in by Polish people and adopted, hidden, and they were never returned to, because no families survived to come and reclaim them. So they live there, they married, they have children. They allow Jews, yes, but Jews are not really so anxious to go and live in places where they were killed. Yeah. Yes.
Did you get to play any sports when you were like?
Did I play any sports where? Well, I didn't go to school. In the summertime, we ran around outside the barrack and we played in the sand, building little castles, putting the foot and building sand like on the beach. You remember what, like little igloos? No, we just were like kids in neighborhood, from the barrack, not from the local people. Yes. What games did we play? Tag. Oh, you know what we used to play? Yes. What is it, the one with that you drop a ball and you pick up jacks? But we didn't have jacks, we had little stones. Is it jacks? Yeah. Yeah. Or we used to do the hopscotching and draw a thing and go, I don't know how to, you know what it is? I don't know how to hopscotch anymore. Too old. Very simple games. We had no toys, no paper, no writing, no doing. Okay, I'll do you.
How long have you been in America?
How long have I been? We arrived in 1949. So how many years is it now? 59, 69, 79, 89, 99, 209. We're almost 70 years here. Yeah. I was 13 and I'm almost 70. Yes.
Did you meet any other refugees?
Did I meet any other in the DP camps, of course, and when I was in the children's home. And here in our group, the survivors, they were all refugees at one point or another. The child survivors, hidden children of the Holocaust. My husband is a refugee survivor. Yeah. How did I meet my husband, Herschel? In Chicago. I was 16, he was 18. And because we were odd, we were much more mature than the American kids. We didn't dress as well. We spoke with accents. We lived with hand-me-downs of this and that. We had a much harder life. The American kids kind of stayed away from us. We were not absorbed into their social time. In those years, they used to have sororities and fraternities, and you had to have special sweaters and special jackets. Well, we didn't have it. So a lot of the teenagers kind of hung out together that were Holocaust survivors. We had dances. There was a certain section on the beach on Lake Michigan that we used to meet, and that's how we met. Many survivors married survivors. Okay. More? Yes.
What was your first car?
What was our first car? Car? That's what you said. A used car, a 1950 Ford, black shift. And actually, I didn't become a driver until my husband went into the service, and at that time we had a Plymouth automatic shift, and I became a driver. And now I'm a tough driver. I go anywhere. Oh, thank you. All right. You know, many of you children, you have some things from your grandparents and great-grandparents. This is all that I have left from my pre-war time. Most of the silverware my mother traded for a little bit of food, a cup of flour, a few potatoes. You know, without a spoon, it was a more valuable than money. Money meant nothing, it's paper. Things you could trade. And this scissor, this was my mother's scissor. She was a self-taught seamstress, and my mother used to cut my bangs with this. And my father used to cut people's hair because he had a scissor. He was not a barber. For nothing, you know, they would say, Meisha, cut my hair. If you didn't have a scissor, how do you cut your hair? There were no barbers, nothing. This scissor is 95 years old, my mother's scissor. Yeah. Very valuable to me. By the way, this is me in the DP camp in the brown coat on the right. The girl in the middle, she's a distant cousin that went to Israel when we came to America. She survived out of the pits. She was injured in a leg, and in the middle of the night, she crawled out from the corpses that were in the pit. And a wonderful, kind Polish farmer took her in. She knocked on his door. She was naked and injured. He took her in and saved her life till the end of the war. She was the only survivor from town. Masha was her name. Yes, there was another question here. Somebody. Yes.
Do you have like people from like school coming up to her like dress codes?
We were lucky to have dresses, not dress code, honey. You know, life was a lot more primitive than you have it now. We didn't have telephones. We were lucky to have electricity in the DP camps. No jobs. You kind of waited. We got support from Jewish organization, packages of food, or there was a common kitchen that some people went and used that. My mother used to cook our own meals. But my father worked in the PX handing out bread to the refugees in the DP camp, displaced persons camp. That's what DP means. My brother coined a word. He calls it delayed pilgrims. That's who we are. Yes. Louder, louder, louder. What was my...
What would she cook for you?
What would she cook? Oh, my mother was the best cook in America, you don't know. In Europe, what she would do is she would take a couple of potatoes and she would brown some flour with a little bit of oil and make like a thick soup with potatoes and salt and pepper. That was food. Bread. Meat was hard to come by. By the way, during the whole war, no eggs, no milk, no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no vitamins, no milk, bread, potatoes, when you were lucky to get it. And you know, when I came to the United States, I was 13, I didn't have one cavity because we had no sugar. Yes. How long did the war last? Now, in reality, the Holocaust started in 1933 when Hitler came to power for the German and Austrian Jews. Their hardships in life became very difficult. But the war started in 1939. September 1st, 1939, they attacked Poland. And it didn't finish till the spring of 1945. And our life did not settle down until we came to Chicago in 1949. So I was 4 years old, and from 1939 to 49, 10 years, we were living haphazardly, no matter whatever the opportunity was. Yes?
Where did you get the money to travel across the...
Actually, we didn't pay for traveling. Once you got the quota and the visa, we became immigrants through the American government. It was a hospital ship, General Hersey, that they supplied. And we traveled for 10 days across the Atlantic. Oh, we were so seasick. And we had food there, but who could eat? We were seasick anyways. But most of the refugees, whether they were Jewish or other, there were other refugees that came to the United States. They were also in DP camps, but not in the Jewish DP camp. They were Polish and Ukrainian that were slave laborers. They didn't want to come back to Russia under communism, so they were brought to the United States. Yeah, but this was a lot of ships were used, the American Army ships, Navy ships. Okay.
What was the point of that war?
What was the point of that war? Hate, ugliness, greed, crazy leader, discrimination, anti-anything. People became mesmerized by a crazy man that one wanted to build a world based on blonde, blue-eyed. But if you were Jewish, no, you could. Many Jews are blue-eyed and blondes. I was a blonde, but brown-eyed. When I was born, my hair was as light as you, and probably lighter. No point. There was no point. Because actually they destroyed their own country. Now Germany is a much more reasonable country. They understand what happened and what they followed. But there's a lot of discrimination that's going on all over the world because of Israel and the Palestinian issue, that they cannot settle peace, and many political things. I myself don't understand all of that. People want to live in peace. No point. War is ugly. It kills. She had her hand up first.
So technically Hitler hated himself because he was Jewish?
Technically, Hitler hated himself because he was Jewish. No, he was not Jewish. This is a lie. His mother worked for Jews, and apparently he was born illegitimate, supposedly, so they are thinking that maybe the Jewish man that was the father, but it's not. It was proven that he was not. He was not Jewish, honey. You had a question. Oh, you had a question.
What's your husband's work?
What is my husband's work? I love you all. You know, when I speak to kids of your age, I love you. You've got questions. I adore you. My husband, he became in Chicago a insurance agent. He worked for Allstate Insurance for many, many years and retired from that company. He was very good and very fair. The company liked him because he did a good job for the company, and his customers and also the company liked him because he was very good with the clients and fair. Yes? I'm getting hearing aids, I promise you. Yes, say it louder.
How did you remember all that stuff that you were such a little girl when it happened?
Wonderful question. How did I remember all that stuff that had happened? And I have memories from the time that I'm 2.5 years old. I'm very lucky. Because I remember from before the war, I am not a Holocaust survivor from the ashes. I come from a normal life with loving family. We had holidays. I was loved by many people. I was able to go into any household and was greeted with love. But I am lucky, I do remember. And when I started to write my own memories, I didn't write about the Holocaust. I wanted to capture the different scenes that I remember as a child. And my mother used to say, "What do you remember you were a child?" So, you know what, I'd say, "Mom, I remember, and I would draw the furniture where it stood. This is what," she'd say, "Oh, you remember." I proved it to her, yeah. But, you know, a child's memory, your memory is your own. My brother can have different memories because he was 6 years older, so he saw things in a different way. I'm very fortunate. I see things in pictures, almost in color, yes.
How did your parents punish you?
How did your parents How did my parents punish me? Oh, I'll tell you how. My mother would give me a slap, and my father would say, "Don't listen to her, go play." That's it? Okay. So anyways, again, I want to tell you, I come here not because I want you to feel sad for me. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I want you to remember the lesson that I bring for you. That's why I get up early in the morning and drive an hour, and I come to speak to you. I want you to be better people, better future, better world for yourselves, for our country, for the world, and we all will benefit from it. I thank you all for inviting me. Thank you, teachers. Thank you.